In the beginning of the episode, we see the protagonist, Oren Dura, cutting down a pack of horned rabbits deep inside a dungeon. Since he isn't struggling much, he calmly notes that he hasn't lost his touch as a swordsman yet. Moments later, a group of goblins rushes him, so Oren starts things off by casting a support spell on himself, boosting both his physical strength and his sword. He explains to us that support magic is usually meant for party members, but since he's going solo, he has no choice but to cast it on himself. With his stats enhanced, he slices through the goblins with ease. But the problem is that they just keep coming. As he fights, Oren keeps a close eye on the clock, explaining that his support spell has already been active for 2.5 minutes. Eventually, the effect wears off, but since he isn't supporting anyone else, his mana reserves are still high. Without hesitation, he recasts the spell and keeps slaughtering monsters. He goes on to explain that the duration of support magic depends entirely on a person's magic resistance, and in his case, it lasts exactly 3 minutes. By carefully tracking the timing, Oren keeps refreshing the spell seconds before it expires, all while admitting that an ordinary adventurer like him shouldn't really be acting as a jack of all trades. He then reveals that he used to be an enchanter before being suddenly kicked out of his party. This leads into a flashback from 2 nights earlier, where Oliver, the party leader, approaches Oren along with the rest of the team. At first, Oren assumes it's some kind of bad joke, since he and Oliver are childhood friends who've been together for years. But Oliver coldly tells him that he's endured Oren's incompetence long enough. Annalie and Derek back him up, saying that Oren has only been holding them back. Completely stunned, Oren recalls how 8 years ago, he and Oliver formed the party together from nothing, eventually climbing all the way to S rank. They even earned the title of the Heroes Party after becoming the only group to clear the 94th floor of the Great Southern Dungeon. To Oren, being kicked out feels like losing both children in a divorce. Desperate, Oren begs for another chance and demands to know why Oliver suddenly changed. Oliver explains that during a joint raid a few weeks ago, he saw how insanely powerful the enchanters from other S-rank parties were, and that made them realize just how weak Oren really was. Oren argues back, saying he's originally a swordsman, so of course he can't match full-time enchanters. Even so, he's created his own original magic and contributed plenty. Derek doesn't care, claiming Oren only switched roles because Oliver was better with the sword. Oren denies it, insisting he switched because he had the most aptitude, and that his self-made spells are the reason they survived the deepest dungeon floors. But Oliver shuts it all down, revealing that he's already chosen a replacement enchanter. After apologizing for betraying him, he turns away. With nothing left to say, Oren accepts his fate and leaves in silence, only to be stopped by Annalie, who vents her frustration by calling him a clownish jack of all trades who thinks he can do everything back in the present. Oren admits to himself that she's not wrong. Right now, he's acting as both a swordsman and an enchanter. Still, he vows to master both paths so no one can ever belittle him again. After clearing the floor, he heads toward the teleportation crystal, only to notice a group of adventurers rushing past in a panic. They're arguing about how they abandoned a girl during a fight with orcs. Their leader justifies it by saying she only joined the party that day, so sacrificing her was unavoidable. Hearing this, Oren sees his own situation reflected in hers. Furious, he confronts them, tearing apart their excuses and forcing them to reveal where they left her. The girl turns out to be a young enchanter who's barely holding on by maintaining a weak barrier against the orcs. Crying and begging for help, she watches as her barrier finally shatters. At that exact moment, Oren arrives, blasting the monsters back with a wind spell to create distance. He reinforces himself with support magic and then takes on the orcs alone. His movements are so clean and overwhelming that the girl can't even tell whether he's a swordsman or an enchanter. She's never seen orcs cut down so effortlessly. Once the last monster falls, she collapses to her knees in tears, overwhelmed by the fact that she's still alive. Oren escorts her safely out of the dungeon, but just as he's about to leave, she stops him and asks for his name. She introduces herself as Sophia Clodel, and her surname immediately rings a bell for Oren. He introduces himself in return, but Sophia insists on treating him to dinner as thanks. Despite his refusal, her puppy dog eyes eventually wear him down, and he agrees. She takes him to a shop marked with a rabbit crest, which Oren recognizes as the same symbol on her cape. That's when he realizes she belongs to one of the largest guilds around, the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Inside, Sophia runs into her older sister, Selma, who's there for a business meeting. Seeing Sophia with a man, Selma immediately jumps to conclusions and scolds her for having a boyfriend. Sophia quickly denies it, but when Selma looks closer, she recognizes Oren. Oren knows her as well. identifying Selma as the leader of the strongest S-rank party in the guild and the most powerful enchanter on the continent. She's also the one who revolutionized party composition by assigning specialized roles, a change Orin secretly resents since it forced him to abandon the sword and become an enchanter. Orin senses Selma's strange expression and asks if she's angry with him. She snaps back, accusing him of going after her little sister. Realizing the misunderstanding, Orin explains that they're only having dinner and that he has no romantic interest in Sophia at all. Somehow, that only makes Selma angrier, as she takes it as an insult toward Sophia. Before things spiral further, Sophia reveals that Orin saved her life. Selma immediately puts the pieces together, realizing Sophia snuck into the dungeon alone against her wishes. Although annoyed, she's relieved that Sophia is safe, forgives her, and makes her promise not to do anything reckless again. She then sincerely thanks Orin and apologizes for her earlier behavior. Over dinner, Selma recalls their time together during the joint raid, where both she and Orin served as enchanters. She admits that his support magic helped tremendously. Sophia, shocked, asks if Orin is someone famous, and Selma casually reveals that he's a former member of the hero's party. When Orin confirms he was kicked out just days ago, Selma immediately realizes he's now a free agent. Seeing her chance, she invites him to join their guild's training expedition the next day. She explains that a group of A-rank adventurers will speedrun 50 dungeon floors to train new recruits, something that normally takes months. Selma hints at a shortcut and admits she's under pressure from sponsors. Orin quickly figures out that the real goal is power-leveling rookies by having veterans defeat the floor bosses for them. Impressed, Selma confirms it and asks him to help, offering generous compensation. Yet despite feeling happy to be needed, Orin refuses, still haunted by being labeled a weak enchanter. He insists he doesn't want to be an enchanter anymore. But when Sophia looks up at him and begs for his help, he wavers. He doesn't promise anything, only saying he'll think about it, and clarifies that if he joins, it'll be as a swordsman. Selma is surprised but accepts it, assuming he'll switch roles if things go south. She tells him to come to the Silver Rabbit's headquarters if he decides to join. Afterward, Orin visits an old man's shop, where he served tea and thanked for boosting the store's sales. When Orin apologizes for not being able to promote it anymore, the old man sees through his shaken confidence and reminds him that titles don't define who he is. Moved by his words, Orin thanks him with tears in his eyes. The next morning, Orin arrives at the Silver Rabbit's Guild, where Selma is already waiting at the gate. She's clearly been expecting him and smiles when she sees him. She notes that he looks far more alive than before, and Orin admits that he feels relieved after leaving the hero's party and is excited to see where his new path leads. And with that, his new journey finally begins. Moments later, Orhan and Selma head out to meet the leader of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, a man named Vince Briars. By the time they arrive, Vince has already heard countless stories about Orhan and the kind of abilities he brings to the table. Because of that, he's convinced right away that Orhan would be an incredibly valuable addition to their group. Orhan responds politely, saying it's an honor to meet the leader of such a famous and well-known clan. Still, before agreeing to anything, he asks if he can hear more details about the teaching expedition first. Vince nods, then turns to Selma and tells her to break everything down for him. The three of them sit down together, and Selma starts laying it all out in a calm and organized way. As she talks, the scene cuts back to the past. Selma had just found out that Orhan had left the hero party, so she immediately went to report the news to Vince. When Vince heard about it, he was certain the hero party wouldn't be nearly as strong without Orhan around. Selma agreed and explained that Orhan's support magic pushed the party far beyond what they actually deserved. She admits that his magic effects themselves are weaker than average, but his casting speed is absurdly fast, at least 4 times faster than her own. On top of that, his ability to read the battlefield and apply the exact support spell at the perfect moment is what makes him an ideal enchanter. The scene shifts back to the present meeting. By now, Orhan understands the general plan. There will be 10 rookie parties, along with 5 escort members, with Orhan and Selma included among the escorts. The rookie teams will rotate, taking turns fighting monsters inside the dungeon. If anything dangerous or unexpected happens, the escorts will jump in immediately to handle it. Orhan understands most of it, but one thing keeps bothering him. He points out that there are only 5 escorts. Selma responds by saying the goal is to raise the rookies to level 51, and if there were too many escorts, the dungeon would be far too easy. According to her, limiting the number of escorts is meant to keep things challenging so the rookies can grow faster. Even so, Orhan can tell right away that this explanation isn't the whole truth. Still, he decides not to press the issue. Instead, He says he understands and agrees to take part. With that settled, Vince explains the payment. Orhan will receive 2 gold coins up front, and 10 more if the mission is completed successfully. The following day, he arrives at the dungeon entrance where all the students are already gathered. Before long, he runs into Selma and Sophia. When he takes a closer look at Sophia, he notices that her outfit stands out from the others, so he casually compliments her on it. Sophia instantly turns bright red, clearly flustered by his words. Selma sees the reaction and is left completely speechless. A moment later, Selma looks around and realizes many of the students look nervous, tired, and discouraged. Seeing this, she quietly asks Orhan if he can help lift the mood before they head in. Sophia heads back to her party, while Selma brings Orhan over and introduces him to the rest of the escort team. There's Anthem and Bernard, both serving as defenders, and Kathy, who handles healing. Orhan studies them carefully and quickly realizes that they make up a solid and well-balanced group. Even so, he can't help wondering what they would have done if he hadn't joined. His instincts keep telling him something about this mission feels off. But no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't quite put his finger on why. Soon after, Selma steps forward to address the students. Just by looking at their faces, she can tell how tense they are. To calm them down, she announces that they're being escorted by Orhan, a man who reached floor 94 of the dungeon and who was once part of the hero's party. The reaction is immediate. Excitement spreads through the group, and their anxiety fades away. Many of them start believing that with someone like Orhan around, they'll be just fine. Once things settle down, Orhan quietly asks Selma if hyping him up like that was really necessary. Selma tells him it absolutely was, explaining that keeping the students calm and confident is part of their job as escorts. After thinking it over, Orhan realizes she's right and lets it go. Orhan is then assigned to escort group 10, which turns out to be Sophia's group. He notices there are only 3 members instead of the usual 4. Assuming someone is late, he asks about it, only to learn that they're actually a 3-person party. Then the group's leader, Logan, steps forward and confidently introduces himself, boldly claiming that he's a great enchanter and that he'll surpass Selma one day. Orhan immediately picks up on his overwhelming confidence and silently hopes his skills can back up his words. Next, Caroline introduces herself as the defender. Orhan quickly notices she isn't wearing any armor and asks if she plans to put some on later. She casually says people ask her that all the time, explaining that her style focuses on dodging instead of blocking, and that armor would only slow her down. Finally, Sophia introduces herself properly and politely, which helps Orhan relax a little. Before long, the group heads into the dungeon. Once inside, Orhan feels relieved as the noise fades and the dungeon's silence settles in. As they move forward, Caroline keeps firing questions at him about the hero party and why he left. Having no intention of admitting he was kicked out, Orhan shuts her down coldly, telling her it's none of her business. Deeper in, 2 demon wolves suddenly appear behind them and charge forward. Orhan notices instantly the trap spells he set earlier activate, killing the wolves on the spot. These traps are nearly impossible to detect before triggering, making them perfect for dealing with threats from behind without slowing the group down. They continue onward and eventually reach floor 20. Along the way, Orhan carefully watches how the party fights. At first, he thought Logan was just an arrogant rookie, but after seeing him in action, he admits Logan has real talent. If he keeps improving, he could eventually hold his own in an A-rank party. His biggest flaw is poor command skills, since his orders are slow and unclear, but Orhan believes experience will fix that. Caroline's speed is incredible and suits her dodging style perfectly, but she rushes in without thinking and relies too much on her daggers, which may lack power later on. Sophia doesn't stand out at first, but Orhan realizes she's better than most rookies. She fights cautiously and holds herself back, yet she has no major beginner mistakes, which makes Orhan genuinely interested in her future growth. Soon after, the escort teams ahead of them defeat the floor 20 boss. Selma tells the students to register the floor on their guild cards, marking the end of training for the day. The next morning, Orhan finds a newspaper and learns that the hero party has already found a new enchanter. Realizing his removal is now public, frustration washes over him. He wishes they'd waited until the expedition ended, worrying how the students might see him now. Still, he pushes the thought aside and heads for the dungeon. On the way, he's suddenly stopped by someone familiar. Luna, one of his former party members, begs him to come back. Calm as ever, Orhan refuses. Luna takes his hands and reminds him of their promise to clear the dungeon together. Something inside Orhan snaps. He pulls away and turns his back on her, reminding himself that the dream was shared by Luna, Oliver, and himself back when they were children. Once, he truly wanted the 3 of them to stay together forever. But now, with everything changed, Orhan finally accepts that some dreams are better left behind. On the way there, Orhan can't help but think back to how he was banished from the hero's party. That exact incident is what today's newspaper bluntly called out, which means every new recruit has probably already read it. And with Selma hyping him up so much for being a former member of the hero's party, the truth crashing down like this only makes things worse. The rookies must be completely unsure of what to think of him now. Before long, Orhan arrives at the dungeon entrance, where all the rookies are already gathered. However, the atmosphere feels nothing like yesterday. The air is stiff, and it's painfully obvious that everyone here has seen today's newspaper. Logan, meanwhile, reflects on how things might have been different if Orhan had left on his own terms. But the paper clearly stated that he was kicked out for being too weak, and that detail changes everything. When Orhan greets the rookies, he's met with mixed reactions. Some respond politely, others awkwardly, and a few barely acknowledge him at all. Just then, Selma shows up alongside Ant, Byrne, and Kathy. She immediately apologizes to Orhan, admitting that she unintentionally caused this misunderstanding by pushing the idea that he used to be part of the hero's party to put the rookies at ease. Orhan quickly shuts that down, telling her that none of this is her fault. He encourages her to keep her head held high, lead the party into the dungeon as planned, and let him provide support from the back. Ant, Byrne, and Kathy chime in as well, saying that whatever happened between Orhan and the hero's party doesn't matter. What truly matters is that Orhan is one of the very few people alive who made it to the 94th floor and lived to tell the tale. Hearing that eases some of the pressure weighing down on him. Orhan then heads over to his party, where Sophia and Carol greet him with genuine warmth, wishing him a heartfelt good morning. Logan, on the other hand, seems hesitant, unsure of how he's supposed to treat Orhan now. Picking up on the tension, Orhan decides to break the ice himself and asks if they saw today's newspaper. Sophia and Carol admit that they did see it, but brush it off. Logan, however, mentions that he doesn't follow Fox News and directly asks Orhan if what the paper said was true. Orhan answers honestly, saying that technically it is true, since he was banished from the hero's party for being too weak. That's when Sophia snaps, unable to take it anymore. She insists that he's lying, reminding everyone how she personally saw him take on a massive horde of orcs by himself and defeat them without breaking a sweat. Orhan thanks her for believing in him and reassures the group that even though he's no longer part of the hero's party, he's still more than capable of helping them safely reach the 51st floor. He asks them to trust him. Sophia and Carol seem satisfied with that answer, but Logan looks conflicted, feeling as though he's been betrayed. With that, they head into the dungeon. Today's objective is to clear from the 21st floor to the 35th floor. For now, Orhan is supposed to stay back, give no orders, and only step in if things spiral out of control. The expedition starts off smoothly. On the 24th floor, Carol takes care of the monsters with her twin daggers. By the time they reach the 30th floor, Sophia handles the larger monsters with ease, surprising even Orhan, who begins to wonder if he underestimated her. Soon enough, they arrive at the 31st floor, the middle floors. This is where guides are expected to step in. Suddenly, he senses a group of goblins nearby and alerts the party to prepare for combat. He also notices a stray orc wandering close by, making the situation trickier. Still, he's confident in the rookie's abilities that he orders Carol to take on the goblins, while instructing Sophia to deal with the orc using long-range magic. Orhan then turns to Logan and tells him to use his support magic. Before Orhan can even finish speaking, Logan has already set up multiple magic circles and begins casting agility spells on Carol. Even so, Logan remains unconvinced, thinking Orhan's commands are obvious and that anyone could have given the same instructions. Suddenly, the situation takes a turn when the orc triggers Sophia's PTSD. She freezes up, panicking and failing to launch an attack. In his panic, Logan looks toward Orhan, questioning what kind of guide he really is. That's when he notices Orhan casually forming a magic sign that drastically reduces the orc's speed. Orhan moves beside Sophia, calmly telling her to take her time, improperly, and remember that she's stronger than an orc. She takes a deep breath, regains her composure, and fires off a massive fireball that completely obliterates the orc. Everyone is left stunned, including Orhan, who had no idea Sophia could use advanced-level magic. Carol rushes over and hugs Sophia, while Orhan praises her for the perfect shot. They continue onward and eventually reach the 35th floor, where they run into a death tarantula. Logan immediately panics, convinced that this is the end. But Sophia and Carol place their full trust in Orhan and wait for his orders. Orhan tells Logan to cast agility up and strength up on Carol, and magic up on Sophia. Logan doubts the plan, thinking Orhan has lost it by repeating the same strategy, but he follows through anyway. Orhan orders Carol to engage the monster head-on and keep its attention focused on her. She nods and charges forward. He then instructs Sophia to leap onto the monster and shred its back. Sophia immediately gets it, jumping onto the spider and slashing it from head to tail. Orhan warns her to stay sharp and avoid every venomous strike. The tarantula lashes out at Carol, but she dodges and deflects its attacks with incredible precision. Orhan tells Logan to maintain his support spells, reminding him that Carol's life depends on it. He then signals Sophia to pin the monster down. She uses her arrow cutter to slice through its legs, forcing it to collapse. Carol starts celebrating too early, and Orhan warns her that the fight isn't over yet. His warning comes too late, as the spider fires its webs and traps Carol, dragging her closer. Orhan immediately orders Logan to boost Carol's strength and speed. Logan complies instantly, but Carol panics and struggles to break free, begging Orhan for help. Orhan casts a sharpness enhancement on her blades and tells Sophia to ready her rock arrow. Empowered, Carol cuts herself free, and Sophia follows up with her spell, completely nuking the monster. With that, the expedition finally comes to an end as they exit the dungeon at sunset. Orhan praises Logan for his excellent support work, admitting that today's victories wouldn't have been possible without him. Selma congratulates the rookies on their progress and tells them to rest well. Everyone heads their separate ways, but Ant and Burn stop Orhan and invite him out for lunch. After some thought, he accepts, since it's not every day someone treats him. On the way back, Logan asks Sophia about the time Orhan saved her, pressing for details about the spells he used. Sophia recalls that Orhan used a wind blast, enhanced his sword with magic, and sliced through the orcs effortlessly. That's when it finally clicks for Logan. Earlier, Orhan casually used a debuff spell to slow the orc, something even top-tier mages like Selma struggle to pull off. Orhan's timing, spell usage, and battlefield awareness were flawless. Logan realizes he completely misjudged him. Orhan isn't just a mage, he's a genius. Back in the city, Orhan parts ways at a tavern with Burn and Ant, who insist he order anything he wants. They ask about his true role, since he was once an enchanter but now claims to be a swordsman. Orhan explains that he's always wanted to be a swordsman, ever since watching his grandfather slay a massive beast. He fulfilled that dream in the hero's party, but as the floors grew harder, the team shifted to relying on an enchanter. With no one else suitable, Orhan took on the role for the sake of the party. Bitterly, he thinks that the hero's party no longer has what it takes to push further, but decides to leave the past behind. Now, he aims to become a fully self-sufficient swordsman who can conquer even the lower floors alone, unaware that the very next day, the hero's party will cross paths with him in the dungeon he plans to conquer. The next morning, Orhan heads back to the dungeon entrance to take part in the final stretch of the expedition. And the moment he arrives, he is immediately surrounded by the kids, who greet him with visible excitement. Seeing this, Caroline deliberately creates an opening for Sophia, deciding that it's finally time for her to speak up. With a slightly teasing tone, Caroline brings up how nice it would be if they were to receive some kind of reward after successfully completing the expedition. Then, she nudges Sophia in the side, reminding her about how she wanted to formally ask Orhan to join their guild. Sophia gathers her courage and opens her mouth to say it, but before she can get a single word out, Selma suddenly calls out to Orhan from a distance. With an apologetic look, Orhan turns and walks away, leaving Sophia frozen in place, her chance slipping through her fingers for now. As Orhan makes his way towards Selma, he overhears several students chatting excitedly among themselves. They're talking about how the hero party plans to reach the deepest part of the dungeon today and are apparently starting their descent from the 92nd floor. Hearing this makes Orhan stop in his tracks. He can hardly believe how reckless that sounds, especially considering they replaced him with a new member only a few days ago and haven't had any real time to adjust or practice as a team. His chest tightens as he imagines all the ways this could go wrong. But after a brief moment, he exhales and forces himself to calm down, reminding himself that it's no longer his responsibility. Meanwhile, the hero party has already arrived on the 92nd floor of the southern dungeon, accompanied by their brand new recruit, Philly Carpenter. For reasons known only to them, they didn't bother testing their teamwork beforehand. In their defense, though, Philly's credentials are impressive. Just 2 days ago, she was introduced to the group, and it turns out she has already descended as far as the 100th floor of the western dungeon in the past. Because of that, they naturally assume that reaching similar depths in the southern dungeon should be easy with her support. Annalie and Dereric are fully convinced that Philly's support magic will surpass anything Orhan was capable of, and before long, the conversation devolves into them venting about how much they disliked him. Both of them still hold grudges, especially because Orhan never allowed them to throw extravagant parties, despite the massive amount of money sitting untouched in the party's shared account. Listening to this, Philly starts feeling uneasy, as it's painfully obvious that if Orhan hadn't been managing their finances, these two would have already run themselves into the ground. Oliver steps in and tells everyone to cut it out, reminding them that today is supposed to be about welcoming Philly into the party. Right on cue, Luna suddenly barges in, having just learned that Orhan is now participating in the Silver Rabbits expedition. Her shock only deepens when she realizes that the others replaced Orhan without even consulting her. She immediately demands to know why Orhan is no longer with them, and both Dereric and Annalie can barely believe he managed to join such a prestigious guild in such a short time. Still, they brush it off, insisting that it doesn't matter since he's no longer part of their team. At first, Luna assumes Orhan must have left on his own, tired of carrying everyone else. But Dereric proudly declares that they were the ones who kicked him out. Luna is left speechless, stunned by the sheer stupidity of the decision. She remarks that she hasn't heard of anything that foolish since the Kingsman incident and reminds them that Orhan was the very core of their party. Without him, they never would have made it this far in the first place. Unfortunately, her words fall on deaf ears. Dereric dismisses Orhan as nothing more than a subpar enchanter and insists that there's no point in complaining now that he's gone. Luna clenches her teeth in frustration, knowing she can't convince Orhan to come back at this point. Reluctantly, she accepts that he's truly gone. Seizing the moment, Oliver makes yet another questionable decision and announces that he wants to test Philly's synergy with the party right here on floor 92. If everything goes well, they'll push onward to the 94th floor to break their previous record. Luna immediately objects, pointing out that she has no interest in dying. She argues that if they want to test Philly's abilities, they should do so on a much lower floor, like floor 30, where the risks are manageable. Instead of listening, they stare at her like she's speaking in an alien language. Given how reckless they're being, it's honestly surprising they survived this long. They completely fail to grasp how dangerous it is to train a new member on a floor they barely cleared last time. Dereric and Annalie admit it was close back then, but confidently claim Orhan was the reason things were difficult. With someone like Philly, who's supposedly far superior, they're convinced there won't be any issues. Luna remains firmly against the plan, especially since a black dragon inhabits that floor, and she has no desire to be incinerated. Oliver shuts her down, declaring that they're doing this whether she likes it or not. Though she knows she should quit right then and there, Luna can't bring herself to abandon the party just yet, and things immediately start going downhill. They soon find themselves facing a giant mammoth, an enemy they normally would have defeated without much trouble. This time, however, Oliver's sword barely leaves a scratch. Dereric struggles just to block the mammoth's attacks, and Annalie's fire magic looks more like harmless fireworks. Confusion spreads through the group, as they expected to be stronger with Philly's buffs. Instead, the opposite is happening. Philly is barely able to maintain her enchantments, and because she's so focused on doing that, she can't analyze the battlefield or give proper instructions. Left to their own devices, the party proves once again that good decision-making is not their strong suit. Eventually, Oliver has a moment of clarity and realizes that he and the others are far weaker than he believed. What he doesn't understand is why. Luna stands off to the side, silently observing, preparing to explain the truth now that reality has finally caught up with them. Before she can speak, a terrifying roar echoes through the dungeon. The black dragon descends, crushing the mammoth in an instant and sending everyone flying. Luna immediately shouts for them to run, but Dereric and Annalie, somehow still delusional, insist they can win. Oliver joins in, convinced they can repeat their past victory, forgetting that Orhan was the reason they succeeded before. Dereric charges forward to block a fireball and is instantly blasted aside. Luna rushes to heal him as Philly freezes in terror. Annalie's fire javelin does nothing, drawing the dragon's attention and earning her a brutal counterattack. Oliver panics as everything collapses around them. At Luna's urging, he finally agrees to retreat, but the dragon's overwhelming power leaves them with only one option, the Fickle Gate. Though dangerous, it's their only chance. As they activate it, the dragon blocks their escape with flames and ends up being sucked through the gate itself. Relief quickly turns to horror as Luna realizes the dragon has been sent to a random boss room. They rush to warn the guild, knowing innocent adventurers could be in danger. As Luna heals the others, she tells Oliver the hard truth. When they face the dragon again, They'll need Orhan. She explains that the party's weakness isn't because they've declined, but because they relied entirely on Orhan's magic. His original spells, his timing, and his enchantments carried them far more than they ever realized. Though the truth finally sinks in, Oliver's ego refuses to accept it. As for Orhan and the others, today marks the final day of their expedition. Their plan is simple enough on paper. They'll begin from the 36th floor, steadily push forward until they reach the 50th, and then teleport out of the dungeon safely. Nothing about it sounds unusual. And yet, for some reason, Orhan can't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at the back of his mind. Technically speaking, the monsters they'll encounter are far beyond what the new recruits can handle on their own. But with so many supervisors actively participating, including Orhan himself, it should still be manageable. Even so, the dungeon feels different today. Something about it feels wrong, and no matter how hard Orhan tries, he can't put his finger on why. Before he can think it through any further, the kids start calling out to him, bubbling with excitement. Against his better judgment, Orhan decides to brush his worries aside for now. Caroline immediately pesters him for tips on how to improve her fighting skills. She wants to take down as many monsters as possible. Orhan tells her bluntly that there's a limit to what she can do while she's still a newbie. He reminds her that, as a defender, her role isn't to charge ahead, but to protect the party. Caroline complains that fighting that way isn't fun at all. Logan chimes in, telling her she should be grateful for Orhan's advice, since even Albert used to say the exact same thing. The moment that name comes up, Orhan's expression stiffens. Albert Sensible was the legendary ace adventurer of the Silver Rabbit Guild. He died last year while fighting the Black Dragon on the 92nd floor. Caroline seems to know the story well. Albert died protecting one of his teammates, even though that should have been the defender's job. She explains that she never wants to let something like that happen to her own party, which is why she's always rushing ahead of everyone else. Orhan can see it clearly in her eyes. That recklessness isn't just confidence, it's trauma. But he isn't getting paid to be a therapist, so he pretends not to notice and moves on. That's when Sophia speaks up, politely asking if Orhan has any advice for her as well. Logan quickly follows, asking for tips of his own. Not long after, the group finally makes their way into the dungeon. During a short break, Selma approaches Orhan and comments on how much the kids have warmed up to him lately. Orhan admits he was worried about how they'd treat him after that newspaper article came out, but they accepted him anyway. Selma mentions overhearing their conversation about Albert earlier and talks about how devastating his death was for the Silver Rabbits. After Albert's fall, Orhan and the heroes' party went on to defeat the Black Dragon. But it was an unbelievably difficult battle. That's how Orhan knows Albert didn't die because he was weak. It was simply an unfortunate chain of events. Selma then admits how hard it's been to fill the hole Albert left behind in the guild. Orhan can tell she's trying to recruit him, but he shuts it down immediately. One party doesn't need two enchanters. Selma understands, but since Orhan plans to switch to swordsmanship, she still believes he'd be a valuable asset. Orhan doesn't respond. Soon after, the mission officially begins. Everyone is briefed on the plan before heading out. Orhan and his group are assigned to Group 10, positioned at the very back of the formation. Far from being an insult, that placement means they're considered the most promising members. Sophia admits she's nervous since they're practically on their own back there. Orhan tells her this is necessary experience. Dungeon layouts can be incredibly complex, and if they ever get separated, they'll need to navigate on their own. Logan agrees, but Caroline still hates the idea of getting lost. That's exactly why Orhan emphasizes preparation. Gathering information ahead of time, especially maps, is essential to avoid nasty surprises. Hearing that, Caroline asks Orhan to share what he knows, since he's gone deeper than all of them combined. Orhan sees no harm in it. He explains that the lower floors officially begin around floor 76, and from there on, most of them are ice or snow-themed. The deepest floors don't start until floor 91. Unfortunately, before he can explain much more, the kids keep interrupting him with question after question. Meanwhile, back on the surface, Luna arrives at the Adventurers Guild with the rest of the hero party. She immediately demands to see the guild master. A receptionist named Ella Laner tells her the guild master is currently in a meeting and that she'll have to wait. Luna panics and insists there's no time. Everyone needs to be force teleported out of the dungeon immediately. Back inside, the group continues onward, but an unsettling realization sets in. They haven't encountered a single monster in a long time. With a room this massive, there should have been plenty. Logan asks if this is normal, but even Orhan has never seen anything like it. It's as if the monsters are afraid of something. Caroline grows frustrated, itching for a fight. Then she spots a lone goblin nearby and charges without hesitation. Orhan shouts for her to stop. She ignores him completely. With no choice, Orhan intervenes, debuffing the goblin just enough for Caroline to finish it off. She proudly declares her victory, but the others immediately scold her for being reckless. They point out that if Orhan hadn't been there, Sophia and Logan would have had to save her, putting the entire party at risk. Caroline finally realizes her mistake and apologizes. As long as she's more careful going forward, Orhan lets it slide. In fact, since she loves fighting so much, he offers to teach her a special technique called active defense. Caroline lights up and begs him to explain. Orhan tells her it's a method of drawing enemy attacks to keep them occupied while the rest of the party prepares a counter. Every creature must prepare before attacking, and if that preparation is interrupted, the enemy can be briefly stun-locked. To pull it off, she'll need to study attack patterns and strike at just the right moment. Caroline thinks it sounds amazing, but Orhan reminds her that the goal isn't to defeat the enemy. Her job is to stall them until her teammates are ready. She agrees. Back on the surface, the guild master finally meets with the hero party. Luna wastes no time and demands the force teleport be activated. The guild master hesitates, pointing out the massive mana cost. Luna shuts him down, revealing the truth. The black dragon escaped through her fickle gate and is now somewhere inside the dungeon. According to protocol, the guild master still has to hold a discussion. Meanwhile, Logan asks Orhan to teach him debuff magic. Orhan advises against it. Debuffs depend heavily on a target's magic resistance, and mastering them would require deep knowledge of every monster. Worse, debuffs are far less effective on deeper floors. Instead, Orhan demonstrates a trick. A pair of wolves charge toward them, but Orhan does nothing. Seconds later, the wolves trigger a hidden trap he laid earlier. He explains it's a simple way to maintain battlefield control and prevent ambushes, a skill every enchanter should learn. Turning to Sophia, Orhan suggests she learn parallel casting. She already uses special grade spells, but they take time to activate. By overlapping casts, she can reduce downtime. Anyone can learn to cast at least 2 spells at once with practice. He suggests Selma could teach her later, but Sophia admits she'd rather learn from him. Caught off guard, Orhan wants to refuse, but he can't bring himself to say no. He agrees. Back on the surface, the force teleport is finally ready. Once activated, the guild master orders the hero party to return and defeat the black dragon. Everyone tenses. They know they can't beat it. Annalie tries to stall, but Luna cuts her off and promises they'll go. She makes one request. Down below, Orhan's group reaches the floor boss room. Since it's too dangerous for recruits, the supervisors take over. Orhan rushes forward, expertly controlling the battlefield while the others prepare their attacks. Thanks to him, the troll boss is defeated within minutes. The mission is complete. At the same time, the hero party heads back into the dungeon. Luna explains why she prioritized teleporting floors 40 to 51st. Orhan is likely there, and they'll need his help to defeat the dragon. Back in the dungeon, Orhan's group clears the 50th floor boss, a massive crab monster. With that, the expedition officially ends. Or at least, it should have. Suddenly, the space above them begins to crack. The air warps, and in an instant, the black dragon descends into the room, terrifying everyone present. Orhan's blood runs cold the moment he lays eyes on the black dragon, and he immediately screams at everyone to run. However, it quickly becomes clear that he's the only one who can even think straight, because even the other A-rank guides are frozen in place, completely overwhelmed by the immense pressure bearing down on them. Unable to move, the rankers can only wonder why this is happening in the first place. Why is a literal monster attacking them on such low-level floors? Selma is the only one who manages to keep her thoughts together, but even she can't move her body. Still, she realizes that she has to take command right here and right now if she wants the rookies to survive this nightmare. But the dragon's overwhelming aura makes the air feel heavy, as if it's sucking the oxygen straight out of the cave. Meanwhile, Orhan racks his brain, desperately searching for a way out of this deadly situation. That's when it suddenly hits him. They've already defeated the boss of this floor, which means that if they can just reach the crystal at the end of the cave, they can teleport out safely. That's their only escape. So, he thinks about rallying the others behind his plan. But when he turns around to call out to them, he realizes they're all stuck in a trance, unable to tear their eyes away from the dragon. That's terrifying, because monsters are naturally drawn to large groups of people, and this dragon is no different. If they don't move immediately, they're going to get wiped out on the spot. For a brief moment, Orhan considers making a break for the crystal on his own, knowing full well that he could probably survive by himself. But he instantly throws that thought away, disgusted with himself. He realizes that he has to stand his ground and fight the dragon to buy the others time to escape. With that, he shouts at the other guides to get into position, snapping them out of their trance, and Selma finally comes back to her senses as well. She immediately orders everyone to take a defensive formation to keep the rookies out of harm's way. The mage quickly puts up a magic barrier, but Selma realizes right away that the spell isn't nearly strong enough to withstand what's coming. Meanwhile, Orhan fearlessly charges straight at the dragon, casting a protective spell of his own to reinforce the guides. Thankfully, it's just enough to save them from certain death. Orhan dodges the dragon's assault while carefully backing off, making sure not to give it any openings to charge up another attack. He then pulls out a small dagger and hurls it straight at the monster's eye. The dragon instantly shuts its eye to protect itself, but that split second is all Orhan needs. Using the opening, he leaps toward the dragon, aiming to decapitate it with a single, powerful swing. The slash releases an enormous shockwave, filling the cave with dust and smoke. And for a moment, the guides think he's actually pulled it off, but Orhan knows better and keeps his guard up. As the dust settles, the dragon rises once again, roaring in rage, completely unharmed. Orhan orders the guides to surround the rookies and protect them from every angle, no matter what happens. While he keeps the dragon occupied, Selma hesitates, unsure if this plan can really work. But Orhan simply smiles and tells her not to worry, assuring her that he has a way to deal with this. He tells the rookies to hang in there, then launches himself at the dragon once more. The beast immediately charges up its fiery breath and unleashes it, but Orhan weaves through the flames and starts circling the monster, doing everything he can to keep its attention on him. Selma and the others can only stare in disbelief at Orhan's skill and bravery, stunned that he's taking on such a monster by himself. Selma starts questioning whether it's really right to let him fight alone, especially when this is the same dragon that killed the legendary hero Albert. Realizing how much she's grown to care about Orhan, the thought of losing him nearly breaks her. Orhan, however, is completely locked in. He dodges attack after attack and even manages to reflect one of the dragon's spells straight back at it, enraging the beast even further. Logan and Sophia are left speechless, having never seen reflection magic like that before. And that's because it's something even the greatest mages can't pull off. Magical reflection is one of Orhan's original spells, capable of returning any magic attack with double the force. Unfortunately, the dragon's scales are so tough that even after taking the blast head-on, it remains completely unharmed. Realizing he's out of options, Orhan knows he'll have to start taking serious risks. He activates a multicast status boost, forming 6 magic circles at once and massively enhancing his abilities. Selma watches in awe, knowing that even high-level mages struggle to maintain more than 3 circles. Yet Orhan does it effortlessly. Before she can even process that, Orhan casts another full stat boost, followed by yet another. In total, he multiplies and doubles his stats 6 separate times, leaving the guides utterly stunned. Something like this is supposed to be impossible. Orhan begins glowing like a super scion, lightning crackling around his body. The dragon, unaware of what happens when scions snap, goes on the offensive and swings its tail. But Orhan vanishes and reappears on a ledge so fast that it looks like he teleported. Selma trembles as she realizes Orhan has surpassed every support mage in history, completely redefining what magic can do. But the strain quickly catches up to him, and blood starts dripping from his nose. He's pushed his stats far beyond human limits, and his body can't keep up. On top of that, his mana is draining at an alarming rate, since he's sustaining over 30 spells at once. Knowing he doesn't have much time left, Orhan decides to end the fight as fast as possible. He charges the dragon, dodging its attacks before leaping into the air. When the dragon tries to swat him down, Orhan creates a mana platform beneath his feet, causing the attack to miss completely. Orhan then activates magic convergence, drawing mana from the environment and condensing it into a single point. Unlike Oliver, who uses this ability purely offensively, Orhan balances both attack and defense. He rushes forward again, sharpening his blade with magic before slashing the dragon's neck. He breaks through the scales, dealing serious damage beneath the armor. On the other hand, Orhan is barely standing, forcing himself forward to prevent the dragon from recovering. The dragon rises again and blasts flames to create distance before surrounding itself with dark magic and firing a barrage of magical spears. Orhan dodges as best he can, all while memories from his past surface. He remembers playing with Oliver as a child, back when life was bright and carefree, before bandits destroyed their village and killed everyone they loved. After burying the dead, The two swore to grow strong enough to protect what mattered to them. Fueled by those memories, Orhan marches through the dust toward the dragon as it charges its deadliest attack. He dodges spear after spear by inches, fires a fireball as a distraction, and swings for the dragon's head, only for the strike to fail as the scales harden like steel. He retreats, blocks incoming attacks, and narrowly survives a curved spear by reflecting it at the last second. With no one else to rely on, Orhan steals himself, setting a trap spell that relentlessly bombards the dragon while he channels magic convergence into his blade, turning it pitch black. He slashes straight through the dragon's attack and lands a devastating hit to its chest. Still, the dragon refuses to fall. Orhan's buffs begin fading, his sword shatters, and both fighters reach their limits. In a final gamble, Orhan summons a dark void and condenses all remaining energy into a massive energy blade. Dodging through the last barrage of spears, he launches himself forward using reflection magic and delivers one final, all-out strike to the dragon's head. A massive explosion fills the cave with dust. When the dust finally settles, Selma finds Orhan still standing, barely conscious, leaning on his blade. Without realizing it, he's just made history as the first person to ever defeat the Black Dragon alone. Meanwhile, the heroes group arrive at the Great Southern Labyrinth and immediately notice a teleportation light shining in the distance. As they make their way over, they find a bunch of rookies gathered around, claiming they had been teleported out of nowhere. Pushing forward, they come across the defeated Black Dragon, and the sight alone leaves the entire team stunned. Standing beside the corpse is Orhandura, the one who brought the terrifying creature down. Leaning on his black magical blade, he slowly steps away, and right before their eyes, the dragon's body crumbles away like sand in the wind. Worried sick, Luna rushes over and shouts that he needs healing. But Orhan simply reaches out, touches her shoulder, and tells her to take care of the rest. Not understanding what just happened, Luna begins to suspect he faced the Black Dragon alone. Sharing the same thought, Dirk speaks up and asks if that's what happened, but he's completely ignored. Luna immediately snaps at the tank, telling him to cut it out because it's obvious Dura did it. Instead of arguing, the heroes group should just own up to their lack of skill. Angered by her boldness, Dirk suddenly lunges at her. Without missing a beat, Luna tells Pixie to handle it. A blue glow instantly shoots out and hits him with a debuff that completely locks him in place. Oliver quickly steps in and tells them to stop, and once the tension cools down, Luna calls off the spell. Even so, the team leader keeps glaring at Orhandura with barely concealed anger. That night, Sophia sits down in her room and begins writing her mission report. She makes sure to go on and on about her companion, the one who gave her the courage to use her first advanced spell, taught her about parallel construction, and most importantly, defeated the infamous Black Dragon on his own. In the middle of writing, Selma drags herself in, looking completely drained, and collapses onto her bed. Seeing how exhausted her sister is, Sophia gently helps her up, and the two of them head off to bathe together. Afterward, Selma looks far more relaxed. The Enchantress admits how relieved she is to see her little sister safe, and Sophia replies that it's all thanks to Orhan. That brings Selma to the real question: what did she think about his fight with the dragon? Sophia says he was unbelievably strong, but that's not what surprises Selma. What she wants to understand is how he's that much stronger than everyone else. Sophia explains that while his movements and magic were incredible, most of what he did were fundamentals, the same basics he taught Team 10 about how backline attackers and defenders should fight. That's why she was able to follow what he was doing and learn from it. Even so, pulling all that off alone was beyond impressive. Selma reflects on how she once believed she would never understand the bottomless well of strength Dura displayed. But through her sister's explanation, she's finally able to grasp a fraction of it. She then turns around and praises Sophia for being amazing, only to put herself down in the process. Seeing her older sister like that, Sophia quickly wraps her arms around her and reminds her how much she admires the way Selma always stands on her own 2 feet and supports so many people. One day, she wants to grow up to be just like her. Hours later, Orhan wakes up in his bed with unbearable pain shooting through his arm. He immediately casts a pain relief spell to keep it under control. Since it's already noon, he realizes just how sore and worn out his body is after yesterday's fight. He had pushed himself to the limit, and honestly, it's a miracle he didn't suffer worse side effects from using that much magic. When he glances out the window, he spots Selma, who soon comes up to invite him for tea at the table. She apologizes for bothering him, but says she just wanted to check in. He assures her he's perfectly fine and thanks her for coming. Then Selma suddenly stands up and bows deeply, thanking him for completing the expedition without losing a single person. Dura immediately freaks out, telling her not to bow like that because she isn't a nobody. But Selma insists that her position doesn't matter right now. He saved her and the recruits, and that's what counts. Changing the topic. She asks if he could drop by the Sky Knight Silver Rabbit's clan headquarters since the leader wants to meet the one responsible for the expedition's success. Later on, at the headquarters, Vince Perez gets straight to the point and invites Orhan Dura to join them. He wants him as a frontline attacker for Unit 1, the strongest unit in the organization, and even plans to recommend him as a commander. Caught off guard, Orhan points out that he's too young. But Vince doubles down, saying the strength and experience he displayed speak for themselves. When Vince asks Selma if she agrees, she backs him up without hesitation and says she would love to work alongside Orhan in supporting the clan. Anyone else would have accepted on the spot, but Orhan asks for time to think it over. Even so, Vince simply smiles and tells him to take all the time he needs. Before Orhan heads out, Vince mentions that the Adventurers Guild wants to see him as well. Still processing everything, Orhan stops by his grandfather's shop to fill him in. The old man quickly figures out what's weighing on his grandson's mind. Orhan is afraid of being used and thrown away again, just like when he was expelled from the hero's party. His grandfather points out that maybe used isn't the right word. People rely on each other, make up for each other's weaknesses, and grow together. He tells Orhan to think carefully before making a decision. Afterward, Orhan makes his way to the Adventurers Guild, only to find it packed with people. At the far end of the table, the guild master asks if it's true that Orhan Dura defeated the Black Dragon alone, and the Enchanter confirms it. Dirk and Annalai immediately cut in, claiming their team had weakened the dragon beforehand, making it easier for him. Orhan shuts them down and tells them to be quiet since they had nothing to do with it. Dirk instantly jumps up, but Luna tells him to calm down. Orhan then turns to Oliver and asks whether they went straight to the 92nd floor with their new Enchanter because they assumed it would be easy after clearing it so many times. When Oliver stays silent, Orhan takes that as confirmation. He reminds them that the smarter approach would have been to move forward only after everyone got stronger, especially considering how many had already died on the deeper floors. Oliver argues that's exactly why they replaced him, with someone who supposedly had stronger support magic. Orhan replies that he isn't upset about being removed. What frustrates him is how lightly Oliver treats enchanters. Oliver claims he values the class, otherwise he wouldn't have invited another one. But Orhan fires back, asking why they started from the deepest floors if Oliver truly understood how much focus an enchanter needs. Oliver dismissively says all an enchanter does is sit somewhere safe and reapply buffs. Fed up, Orhan stands up and states the exact duration of their buffs, explaining that an enchanter must constantly keep track of that timing while giving instructions to the team. Then he asks Oliver which part of that sounds easy. Meanwhile, Team 10 walks down the corridor of the Silver Rabbit headquarters, worried about what Orhan might be doing. After the expedition, they didn't even get the chance to speak with him again. They've grown into his biggest admirers and would love to have him join the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Not wanting to miss their chance, they decide to track him down and ask around for Selma at that very moment. Selma is sitting alone in the garden, quietly practicing how she'll invite Orhan to the clan. She keeps repeating different versions to herself, unsure which one sounds right. Deep down, she suspects he won't want companions again after what he went through. Besides, during the dragon fight, he dismissed her buff as if he didn't even need it. Compared to him, she feels inadequate. The three children suddenly run up and ask if she knows where Orhan lives because they want to invite him. Selma admits she wants the same thing, but believes they'd only get in his way. Logan argues that everyone already knows they're weaker, but that's exactly why he wants Orhan around. And Sophia simply wants their former instructor back. Logan adds that maybe they're weak now, but one day they'll grow strong enough to stand beside him as equals. Hearing that, Selma realizes she can grow stronger too. So she finally tells them he's at the Adventurers Guild, and they immediately dash off after the heavy meeting. Orhan walks out of the guild while the others stay behind to discuss penalties for the forced teleport. Spotting the kids running toward him, he quickly slips into the maze of alleyways. But because of his injuries, running isn't easy. As their footsteps get closer, he conjures magical platforms beneath his feet, turning them into stairs, and climbs up onto a rooftop. Later that afternoon, he heads back into his grandfather's shop, still hearing the children outside. When asked why he's avoiding them, Orhan admits he's decided not to join another group and doesn't want to break their hearts. His grandfather laughs, pointing out how much he clearly cares about them. Out on the street, Team 10 starts to suspect he's avoiding them because he doesn't want to join the Silver Rabbits. Logan and Caroline even go as far as saying they'd leave the clan if that's what it takes to become his apprentices. But Sophia refuses to let things end like that. Inside, the grandfather tells Orhan he looked like he was having fun while running from them and reminds him that he doesn't have to face everything alone. As night falls, Orhan wanders across the open fields, thinking over his grandfather's words. Suddenly, Sophia shows up to thank him for saving everyone. When he tries to dodge her questions by asking what she's doing out so late, she explains this is one of her favorite spots near the clan headquarters. Looking up at the moon, she says that even in the darkest places, it keeps shining, giving her strength. She explains that the name Silver Rabbits of the Night Sky comes from the moon being the night's guide. Their goal is to guide adventurers the same way. Hearing that, Orhan feels a distant memory surface, an image of a girl from long ago. Then Sophia gathers her courage and asks him to join the clan. When he asks what the clan means to her, she says it taught her countless lessons, gave her endless smiles, and became a place she proudly calls home. Her words remind him of what his grandfather said about finding a place of his own. Together, they fall silent, staring up at the moon. The next day, Orhan shows up at the Silver Rabbits headquarters and informs Vince of his decision to join. Right then, Selma walks in to congratulate their newest companion and hands him his uniform. Soon after, Orhan steps out fully dressed in the clan's colors and runs into the children who had been searching everywhere for him. The moment they see him wearing the uniform, their faces light up in pure amazement. One night after that, he ends up dreaming about his childhood, back when he used to square up against Oliver while the people training them to become heroes looked on with sharp eyes, picking up on every single move they made. While Orhan takes it easy, only to get disarmed in the process. He smiles, drops down on the floor with a thud, and says that Oliver is too strong now and that he just can't beat him anymore. Oliver fires back angrily, saying he knows Orhan is much stronger than this and that he used to defeat him every time before. Orhan brushes it off, claiming he isn't that strong anymore and that Oliver surpassed him long ago. Oliver isn't satisfied with that answer, but since he can't do anything about it, he glares at Orhan with anger in his eyes and storms off without another word. Orhan stays down on the ground until Cyan, the silver-haired girl who used to be his friend, rushes up to him and asks if he's okay. Orhan gets back up with a smile and says he's perfectly fine, but admits it's embarrassing that she saw him get beaten up like that. Cyan tells him she thinks he fought heroically and that he looked really cool while doing it. On top of that, she says she already knows what he's capable of if he decides to show his true strength. Orhan looks away and says he can't really do that anymore because his heart is weak and his body just can't handle it. Even so, Cyan promises that one day she'll help him deal with it. But just like the Epstein files, her words get redacted from his memories, and he can't quite piece together what she was talking about. He can't remember how they were supposedly one and the same, what they promised to achieve together, or even how she ended up disappearing to the other side of the kingdom. As it turns out, Cyan is still alive. She's now part of a cult, leading a party of 3 as they cut through a collaboration of 5 powerful adventurer parties just because they didn't belong to their faction. After wiping out every single adventurer, they move on without hesitation. Out of nowhere, a man in white robes steps in front of her and tells her that the cult leaders just received word about an unknown guy in the Northern Kingdom who defeated the Black Dragon all by himself. Cyan is ordered to check him out, recruit him into the cult if possible, and if he refuses, kill him on the spot. She thinks it over and realizes it can't be Oliver since he's way too famous to be considered unknown. Still, it doesn't matter much to her. If the man stands against the cult, she'll take him down without a second thought. With that, she and her party head toward the Northern Kingdom, unaware that the man she's been sent to kill is none other than Orhan, her childhood friend. The pink-haired brat in her party points out that the Northern Kingdom is still under the church's control, so they'll have to keep their heads down. If they get found out, they'll likely end up locked away in a dungeon. Cyan agrees that they need to stay undercover and not draw attention to themselves. At the same time, she can't shake off a strange feeling about this mission and finds herself hoping it'll all be over soon because she has no desire to step foot in that part of the kingdom again. Back in the day, she had been in love with Orhan throughout her childhood, but she was misled into believing that the old men of the church pushed him so hard that he ended his own life. The day she heard that news, her heart froze over. She kept thinking about all the promises they made to stay together and fight side by side. And from that day forward, she was never the same. She made up her mind to see the church destroyed, along with everyone responsible for driving Orhan to his supposed death. Meanwhile, Orhan sits in a meeting with the senior members of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. The nerdy, four-eyed leader introduces Orhan to everyone and makes it clear that he was a key reason their expedition succeeded. since he took down the black dragon all on his own. The leader goes on to say that he believes in Orhan's abilities and wants to raise him to the rank of lieutenant, filling the spot left by their beloved hero Albert, who died last year fighting the same dragon. He asks if anyone has an issue with that decision. An old man speaks up and says he doesn't have a problem with Orhan becoming one of the leaders, but he wants to know if Orhan understands what that role truly means. Once he becomes a lieutenant, he won't just be responsible for himself anymore, but for everyone who serves under him. A lot of lives are tied to this clan, and for many members, the clan is all they have. That means every decision Orhan makes will impact the entire group. So it's their duty to put the clan first, even if they have to suffer for it. Hearing that, Orhan remembers the promise he made to Cyan. Painful memories come rushing back, and he realizes he can't make the clan his entire world. He answers honestly and says that unlike many of them, he still has a life outside the clan, and because of that, he can't devote everything to it. The whole room goes silent. Even Selma didn't see that coming. The old man explodes, saying that a statement like that makes Orhan unfit to be a member at all, let alone a lieutenant. He demands to know what Orhan is even doing there. Orhan calmly responds that he's there because he knows he'll protect anyone and everyone he cares about. The old man looks confused, so Orhan spells it out. He says he'll do whatever it takes to protect his comrades, but that's all he can promise. After a tense pause, the old man finally backs down. The leader calls for a vote, asking who has no issue with Orhan becoming a lieutenant. It turns into a landslide victory, and just like that, Orhan becomes one of the famed lieutenants of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Selma takes him down the corridor to introduce him to the first unit he'll be assigned to. Before they reach it, a girl calls out to Selma from behind, saying she wants to talk to the new lieutenant. Selma smiles and introduces her as Stella from the management division. Stella asks Orhan if he's good at teaching and mentions a new party she'd like him to help out. Selma thinks it's a solid idea, but Orhan wonders if that will interfere with Unit 1. Selma tells him not to worry since he'll have much more free time than he did in the heroes' party. Stella says she'll send over the materials introducing the new party and then hurries off. Selma finally brings Orhan into a room where he meets Unit 1. They gather around a table, and the blue-haired girl introduces herself first as Rain, the mage of the party. Orhan can't help but notice that even though she's the oldest, she doesn't seem to have much to show for it. Rain picks up on that and gets insecure, but the blonde girl quickly cuts in and says her name is Otis, the healer. The last member is a tall, silver-haired guy named Will, the defender who likes to play the role of a tank. Selma then formally introduces herself again as the Enchanter and leader of the party. Orhan takes it all in and realizes that from now on, these are the comrades who'll stand by his side, ready to fight for him, and, if needed, die for him. For formality's sake, he stands up and introduces himself as Orhan, the frontline attacker of the party. Selma tells him to loosen up and not be so stiff. Before Orhan can even sit back down, Will asks how he managed to kill the black dragon. Selma notices Orhan's discomfort and tells him he doesn't have to answer if he doesn't want to. But Orhan says they should be on the same page, so he decides to lay it all out. He explains that the main reason he could defeat the dragon alone is because of 2 original spells he created. Rain is stunned that he made original spells. Orhan continues, saying the first spell is called Impact, which boosts the effect of any equipment or magic by 100 times. The second spell can be cast multiple times to amplify support magic and buffs. During the dragon fight, he stacked his own buffs 32 times. Rain and Otis are left speechless. They point out that such a spell would give him an overwhelming edge against almost anyone. Orhan admits he can only use it on himself, and the strain is so intense that he can't keep it up for long. By the end of the dragon fight, he was barely holding himself together. Otis then asks if that means he can fill any role in a party. Orhan shakes his head and reveals that no matter how hard he tries, he can only use mid-ranked magic. That revelation shocks everyone. Selma asks how that's possible when he clearly understands magic well enough to create new spells. Orhan looks down and says he doesn't know why he can't use advanced magic. Still, his original spells help make up for that flaw, so he's not completely useless. Selma suggests they head to the dungeon soon to get used to working as a team. But Orhan says that before anything else, he needs to pick up a sword. Rain is surprised he hasn't ordered a custom one and points out that forging a new blade would take days. Orhan shrugs and says he usually just grabs an off-the-shelf sword from a store. Everyone is stunned. They can't believe the Dragon Slayer uses the same kind of weapon rookies carry. They end up dragging him to the clan's blacksmith. The blacksmith insists that someone of Orhan's caliber deserves a weapon forged from materials found in the deepest dungeon layers. Orhan tells him not to worry and pulls out a collection of artifacts he gathered, including a scale from the black dragon. The moment he brings it out, the entire party freezes. Orhan immediately realizes he messed up by bringing back painful memories. He tries to apologize, but Rain pulls herself together and says that the black dragon scale would make a sword worthy of the dragon slayer himself. And that's where the video ends. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.